Hi, my name is Josh Bender, and today I'll be talking about Henry Ford. Many people think that he created the car and the assembly line. He actually did neither of those. He just helped work on those. Henry Ford was born in Michigan in 1863. He lived an ordinary childhood. Nothing really crazy happened. He lived on a farm with his family, so his parents were farmers. He was very interested with machines when he was growing up. He had a bunch of watches, and he constantly take them apart and just mess around with the different parts of the watch and then put them back together. He also befriended some steam engine mechanics, and he would just kind of hang around them and talk with them about the engines and kind of watch them fix the engines. At the age of 16, he left the farm and went to the city. There he was an apprentice for the Michigan Car Company. This wasn't a car company. This was a locomotive car company that he just learned a bunch of different skills there. He was only there for 2 or 3 years, and then he went back to the farm. And once he got back to the farm, he didn't really do any farming. He was basically fixing farm equipment and working on steam engines with the people that he knew before he left. He then married Clara Bryant in 1888, and then he moved back to the city of Detroit, where he was a night engineer for the Edison Electrical Illuminating Company. This is how he knew Thomas Edison. He was only a night engineer at first, and then by the time he was done with the company, he was the head engineer there. So that was he got pretty successful at that. And a quote from Henry Ford is, "Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Because he wanted to constantly, that was his thing, he wanted to constantly learn new things. Ford and the automobile. He aided with the team to create the first self-propelled vehicle. They called it the quadricycle, and that's a picture of it right there. Basically just bicycle tires. 2 years later, he helped create the second car. And then after he created the second car, he was trying to get businessmen and investors basically to fund him so he could create more of these cars. And his first 2 companies he had were not very successful, and they ended up failing. After his business failed, he started creating race cars and then racing them, and it became very successful doing that, and that's kind of what put his name on the map, is what helped him get businessmen and investors to help fund him, and that eventually led to his most successful company, which is the Ford Motor Company, and that was his 3rd company that he opened, and obviously he's most famous and successful. His first 2 cars that were created were the Model A and the Model N, and these sold for $600, which is a lot different than back then. It's pretty expensive. Not many people. I mean, people were buying the cars, but he wanted more. He wanted everyone to have one of his cars. So he quoted, "I want a better, cheaper motor car from the great multitude," and this is when he created the Model T. The Model T was very easy to operate and to maintain. And the roads back then weren't very rough. They weren't like the roads we have today. So the Model T was very good at going on rough roads, which were common. When the Model T was created, his current factory that he had, was really small. So he had to move to a bigger factory, which was in Highland, Michigan. And then once he started creating the Model A, he had to move his factory again to Dearborn, Michigan. And this was the largest mass-producing factory in the world. It was right on the lakes, so they could easily bring raw materials in and out. So he constantly had materials coming in, and that's why it got so big. Some troubles that Ford faced. He decided to buy out all of his investors because he wanted to own the entire company to himself, and he kind of wanted the power. The only people that had control in his company was a lot of control was his son, and he was kind of like the CEO, kind of like the second-hand man to his company. He was really obsessed with the Model T at first. He kind of said that this is like the best car out on the market and everyone needs to buy it. And for a great number of years it was, but then the prices and sales started to drop, and he continued to try to sell the Model T, and eventually he had to stop production. This is when he started the Model A. It was more of a higher end car to keep up with cars being made in Europe. The Great Depression was a big hit on him. People stopped buying his cars, and this was not a great time for him. This is when he fell into third place in the US market behind General Motors and Chrysler. And talking about the power thing, he didn't want to unionize his factories because he basically would have more power if he didn't unionize them, and that was a big thing. And then the other thing Ford is famous for is the assembly line. He wanted a way to produce more cars at a cheaper price. And four main things that a group of him and other people in the company thought up were interchangeable parts, continuous flow, division of labor, and reducing the wasted effort. All these things were very crucial in creating an assembly line. He also didn't really come up with the assembly line by himself. He went to different factories and different places and kind of used what they were using and see like what worked, what didn't work, and then he kind of combined everything together. Interchangeable parts was a very good idea because if a part broke, they can easily just fix it and all the parts are the same. So it was very cheap and people were able to fix their cars easier. And he also divided the labor into 84 different steps, so that just kind of shows you the assembly line. And when he started the assembly line with the Model T, it increased production 8-to-1. So for every car he was used to making, he was making 8 of those now. So he was able to sell them more at a cheaper price, so everyone was allowed to have them. And this is a quote I want to read. "I invented nothing new. I simply assembled the discoveries of other men behind whom were centuries of work. Progress happens when all the factors that make it for it are ready, and then it is inevitable."